What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. The history the government hopes you never learn. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Thursday, April 11th, 2019. Sure happy it's Thursday. Sure happy it's Thursday. Sure happy it's Thursday. We have got a lot to talk about. There's a lot going on here today, and I'm sure you're already aware of that. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. That's 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room, ready to answer the phone, put you on the air with your comments and questions and opinions. Getting right on into it, obviously the big news is Julian Assange has been removed from the Ecuadorian embassy by the British police with the permission of the government of Ecuador. And so he's now been arrested. He was taken out of the building and was basically shouting, you must resist, before he was put into a Scotland Yard van and taken away. And of course, the obvious implication is he's about to be extradited to the United States. Maybe. The British courts may have something to say about that, because apparently Assange faces up to 12 months in jail in Britain, as a judge has found him guilty of skipping bail. And the United States is charging him with hacking 750,000 classified documents. Sort of, kind of, maybe. It's a little vague there. Here, the actual specifics are that Assange is charged with helping Manning try to crack a password to leak classified U.S. documents. This is what's coming out of the Department of Justice. And so they're charging Julian Assange with conspiracy, along with Manning, to commit computer intrusion and alleged attempts to break the password for a classified U.S. government computer. Now, the maximum sentence he can get for that is 5 years, which is kind of ironic. He's already been in that little tiny room in the embassy for 7 years. You know, if he'd walked out day one, regardless of, what happened, he'd be out free, more or less, unless he got assassinated here. But a lot of people around the world are slamming this whole situation, saying it is ridiculous to charge somebody for attempting to crack a password. And basically, Edward Snowden said the weakness of the U.S. charge against Assange is shocking, in that the allegation that Assange and Manning had tried to crack the password had been public knowledge for nearly a decade. Now, here's where it gets a little technical. If, in fact, Julian Assange did work with Manning to try and crack a password, then he is in trouble, because the Nixon versus Washington Post, New York Times decision will not apply to him, and he is in a bit of trouble. Now, William Binney was interviewed on Russia Today, and he's out there saying he believes the single hacking charge against Assange is simply an upfront charge designed to allow the British to extradite Assange to America, knowing there's no death penalty for that charge. Binney says that once Assange is in America, he is convinced the U.S. will then unveil all of its life imprisonment or death penalty charges, possibly even in secret, and even convict him in secret, which is, of course, not the way it's supposed to work here in the United States of America. Or Rivero's theory is they're going to get Assange to the United States of America, and they're going to say, we're going to make you a deal. We can either put you away for the rest of your life, or you can admit, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, say no more, that the Russians hacked the DNC emails and gave them to you. Now remember, Assange is already on record hinting pretty much that it came from Seth Rich. But I think this may be one of the reasons why the U.S. wants Assange so badly, is that they can sort of bolster that whole Russian interference in 2016 narrative again by getting Assange to flip on them. Now, here's the real telling situation. Monday, this week, the International Monetary Fund approved a $4.2 billion, with a B, 3-year loan for Ecuador, which appears to have been the reward for turning Assange over. Call it blood money, if you will. Now, I got to tell you with this next part, Donald Trump has totally lost all of my respect. Not that he had a lot of it left, but with this one. Apparently, Donald Trump was being interviewed in the Oval Office by journalists about what was going on with WikiLeaks, and tried to distance himself, saying, I know nothing about WikiLeaks, it's not my thing. Well, of course, that's not what he was saying back in 2016 when he was using it as a major fixture in his campaign, especially after WikiLeaks published those DNC emails. And at that point, he called the site amazing and said he loved what it was doing. Donald Trump praised WikiLeaks for exposing Hillary Clinton's Wall Street speeches. And today's saying, it's not really my thing. So, Donald, you just lost me there. And again, here's a story. This is out of the Daily Mail that reinforces my theory. He clearly knows something. Democrats say Assange may be the missing link between Russia and the Hillary Clinton email hacks, but fret that Trump's Department of Justice could bury it in the post-Mueller era. So here's the strategy going into 2020. They're going to go back to that story that Russia hacked the Hillary Clinton DNC emails, that Assange knows about it, but if nothing's being done about it, it's because that Donald Trump and that William Barr, they're covering it up. So they've got themselves a win-win situation. Assange says, yes, Russia did it, the Democrats win. If Assange says no, it was Seth Rich, or he says nothing, the Democrats are still going to win, because they're still going to push this story. Okay, we're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. And for those of you just coming on board, we're talking about the arrest this morning of Julian Assange. The Ecuadorian embassy simply opened their doors, withdrew Assange's asylum, and allowed the British police to just walk on in, grab him, and take him on out. Now, down in Ecuador, the former President Correa is slamming current President Moreno over the arrest, calling Moreno the greatest traitor in Ecuadorian history, saying it's a crime humanity will never forget. Now, remember, Assange was made an Ecuadorian citizen, so there's a little bit of an extra dimension there. And once again, where was Australia in all of this? Assange is originally from Australia. As far as I know, he's still an Australian citizen. But there's one thing here looking at this Russian connection, tying it all together. And basically, over the last 2 years, they were saying that Trump and Assange secretly were conspiring against Hillary and the DNC, and it turns out Trump's Department of Justice has been working to extradite Assange. So there's something not making sense there. In hindsight, Assange should have picked the Russian embassy. And I'm not even sure why he went to the Ecuadorian embassy, because he wasn't a citizen of Ecuador at the time. But he definitely should have gone to the Russian embassy. He could be in Russia today, having long talks with Edward Snowden. But outrage over this is spreading throughout at least the independent media, if not the corporate media. Some of the corporate media is outraged. The Guardian came on out and said, this is absolutely wrong. And I think that's because many people in the corporate media are starting to realize that if Assange can be extradited and prosecuted for publishing secrets, so can they. And that's going to have a very chilling effect on reporters trying to actually do their jobs. So it is a shameful day in the annals of British justice. Meanwhile, of course, the liberals, they're delighted. They think, oh, this is great. This is absolutely great. And you know what's really amazing? The corporate media, over all these years, they profited from Assange's work. Ever since WikiLeaks came into being, they were publishing stories based on the leaks. They were doing stories about WikiLeaks. They were doing stories about Julian Assange. They got a lot of column inches and airtime out of him. And now, well, for the most part, the corporate media, they could care less. They could absolutely care less. But this may signal the end of the fourth estate. Now, over at WikiLeaks itself, editor Kirsten Hrafnsson, okay, has said that Assange is facing political persecution for doing his job as a journalist. They're going to fight the extradition to the United States, and saying that no journalist will be safe from extradition to the U.S. for doing their job if this is allowed to go forward. And absolutely that is correct. Glenn Greenwald basically came on out saying it best. This is the criminalization of journalism. And Greenwald, of course, founder of The Intercept, is saying if you're a U.S. media star who has spent 2 years claiming to be so concerned about press freedoms over Trump's mean tweets about your friends, but you don't raise your voice in protest over this grave attack on press freedom, you better take a hard look in the mirror. And he's absolutely right. Corporate media is just, their knickers are always in a twist every time Donald Trump comes on out and says, you know, there's fake news. Remember this 2 years of Trump-Russia collusion that turned out to be complete vapor, for which, by the way, nobody has apologized and nobody been fired. And when Trump criticized the media said, well, you're encroaching on our freedom of the press. We have the freedom to say Trump-Russia collusion. So we were wrong about it. And when Assange gets arrested, nothing. But the reality is that the world owes a debt of gratitude to Julian Assange for exposing the collateral murder that was taking place in the war zones, especially that horrible video of the Reuters camera crew being gunned down by a U.S. helicopter. And then when people came to try and help the victims, they got gunned down too. That was the video that put Chelsea Manning and Julian Assange on the map, so to speak. And then, of course, WikiLeaks came on out with more about the mass surveillance, about the DNC corruption, how the DNC stole the 2016 Democratic nomination from Bernie Sanders. So it sounds to me like WikiLeaks is doing a good job and Assange was doing a good job. And now that he's in British custody, the Brits may hold him for a year, and that will give Assange's legal team a year to fight the U.S. extradition. So we'll see what's going to happen there. Turning to the various war zones, Venezuela has walked away from the Organization of American States, understandably. The body violated their own charter and basically went along with this U.S. desire to recognize Juan Guaido's lackey, Gustave Tarre, as the new representative from Venezuela. And reporter Anya Parampil, who was at the meeting, noted that 5 of the 18 countries that voted for the U.S. measures were recently taken over by pro-IMF governments. Meanwhile, the Haitian government, which is currently embroiled in a popular uprising over its mismanagement and embezzlement of funds from a generous deal with Venezuela on petroleum, voted for the measure in order to appease the United States and secure Washington's support in quashing the uprising. So there's a lot going on over there. All right, over in Africa, in Sudan, we were talking about the protests that were going on and whether the military was going to side with the government or the protesters, and they sided with the protesters. And basically, Omar al-Bashir has been forced out in a coup. And unfortunately, a lot of the people in the streets of Sudan are saying it's not really an improvement because many of the same faces that were working with Omar al-Bashir are now part of the coup d'etat. And they're saying those who have ravaged our country and massacred its citizens intend to steal every drop of blood and sweat the Sudanese people have shed in their glorious popular revolution. So sometimes you have to be careful. The revolution can be worse than what you had before. Not always, but sometimes. When we talk about the French Revolution, for example, most people think it's just one. Ooh, we're revolting, take the kings to the guillotine, it's over, French Republic. Actually, there were several French revolutions in rapid succession, because after the first revolution, the revolutionaries said, hey, we can start living the high life the way those we replaced did. And then the second revolution said, no, you cannot. And many of the people who led the first of the many French revolutions, wound up going to the guillotine themselves in subsequent revolutions. And then finally, after enough blood had been shed and the guillotines had sung enough, France got a government that understood we need to take care of the French people. And for about 100 years after that, they did have a government that did a really good job of taking care of France. Over in Egypt, they have announced they are withdrawing from the U.S.-led Arab NATO initiative against Iran. This was something the United States was trying to put together to forge an Arab equivalent of NATO with key Arab allies in order to basically go after Iran, because Iran is evil, because they won't sell their oil for the U.S. dollar, and Israel doesn't like them. And for those reasons, you know, we're going to spend all this money and kill all these people. But Egypt has withdrawn, saying he doubted the seriousness of the initiative. They'd yet to see a formal blueprint laying it out. And of course, because the danger of the plan would increase tensions with Iran. And Egypt doesn't really want that right now. In fact, I think all over the Middle East, all over the world, but especially the Middle East, I think people are saying it's already too tense. And we need to figure out a way to pull it back down before somebody hits a button and it's really on for real. Over in Ukraine, they're coming up on their elections, and the latest shock poll is showing Ukrainian comedian Volodymyr Zelensky is going to win the presidential election by a huge margin. Zelensky has 61% in the poll, while Poroshenko is lagging behind at just 24%. Now, Zelensky's fame is based on playing the role of Ukraine's president in a TV situation comedy, but he's focused his campaign on railing against corrupt politicians influenced by the rich oligarchs. And right now in Ukraine, that is good politics to be doing that. Down in Israel, we're looking at the aftermath of the elections, and there was a lot of skullduggery. And even more interesting, nobody seems really all that worried about keeping it concealed. A Likud statement has said that they deployed 1,300 of these hidden cameras into Arab polling stations in Palestinian towns, and the goal was to discourage Arab voters. And the Israeli public relations firm Keisler Inbar claimed credit for it, saying that, yes, the plan for this was to suppress the Arab voter turnout. And they alluded to coordinating with the Likud party. So again, this claim that Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East is starting to look a little bit strained, especially because irregularities have already surfaced in many of the polling places. There are reports from many polling locations of a higher than 100% voter turnout. Apparently, voter turnout was 167% in the illegal settlement of Brukin, while the Bedouin village of Bir Haj managed a turnout of around 117%, which means, yes, there was massive election fraud. Now, during the celebration of Netanyahu's victory, theft, whatever you want to call it, they were waving Trump flags, and it underscores that Netanyahu ran on a dual ticket, a Trump-Netanyahu ticket. And it worked for him, especially that bit about declaring Iran's Republican National Guard Corps to be a terrorist group. So bolstered by their success, or emboldened by their success, the Israeli municipality of Jerusalem delivered demolition notices to residential structures in the Isawiya neighborhood yesterday, 13 homes. Basically, under the pretext they were built without the necessary building permits. Of course, Israel never issues building permits for Palestinian homes. So it's a catch-22. Now, it was noted that some of the buildings were erected more than 15 years ago and should have been grandfathered in. But at this point, I think we're just going to see Israel just uncork on Palestine. We're going to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, and I know you're all tired of hearing this, and to be very honest, I'm tired of saying it, but folks, Republic Broadcasting really needs your help. we've been running on the edge so long it's become a lifestyle. And you know what's at stake. And you know that the government and corporate media are trying to come down hard on anybody who challenges the official narrative. Julian Assange, his arrest this morning shows that. We need your support, or we're just not going to be here any longer. It is that stark. So the postal address where you can send a check, money order, or if you prefer anonymity cash, is Republic Broadcasting Network, 2251 Double Creek Drive, number 302, Round Rock, Texas, 78664. The phone number where you can make a credit or debit card donation or pledge to be a recurring subscriber is 800-724-2719, extension 1 during business hours, extension 3 at all other times. The network thanks you. And of course, donations are welcome and needed at whatreallyhappened.com. Okay, we've got callers on the line, so let's go to Jim in Chicago. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Michael. I have two quick questions regarding Julian Assange. Why now? Considering he's been locked up in the Ecuadorian embassy for 7 years, so why now? And the other question regarding Chelsea Manning. Didn't Barack Obama pardon him a long time ago? So why is he back in jail?
Apparently, there were new charges related to this conspiracy, and his refusal to testify. He was called before, was called before a grand jury to testify regarding these indictments against Assange, and refused to testify there. So, yeah, it's just a huge mess. As for why now, as I mentioned earlier in the show, Ecuador just got a very nice loan from the IMF, and the timing is just too cute.
Right. Getting back to Chelsea, could that be double jeopardy by any chance?
I'm sorry. No, not if it's a new charge.
Could it be? Oh, okay. Even though it's related to the same thing.
No, double jeopardy would not apply.
Okay, then. All right, then. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. And I just got an email from somebody saying that apparently Assange, in fact, did request asylum from Russia, but was refused, which I'm sure they're regretting right about now. Okay, let's switch over to Steve Elkins. Aloha, Steve. I may have to take you through the commercial break. What's on your mind?
Well, I am very disappointed to Donald Trump trying to distance himself from Julian Assange when he clearly benefited from the outing of the corruption from Hillary Clinton. That's really a kind of a gutless, a spineless thing to do. It's not honorable at all, and I totally have no respect for this man at all. And I just wish there was somebody else. I wish the system was foolproof and was fraud-proof election system. He didn't fix that either.
Nope.
I don't know, 2020, I really don't want to see him back in. I don't know who would be honorable, and that's the word I want to use, is honorable, to bring back honor to our country. And this Make America Great Again, I don't like the MAGA saying at all, because great means conquering as far as I'm concerned. It's nation building, it's regime toppling, and
I disagree. To me, a great America is manufacturing and good agriculture and exploring space and being a world leader in technology. That, to me, that's what Making America Great Again was supposed to be all about. But you're absolutely right. Under the Trump administration, especially under Bolton and Pompeo, it's about war and conquest. And I don't think a lot of people really agree with that particular interpretation of MAGA.
I hope Julian Assange has several dead man switches in place. I really do.
I certainly hope.
In case they took him out.
I certainly hope so as well. By the way, in the last months of his campaign, Donald Trump said the word WikiLeaks 164 times. So for him to sit there in his Oval Office early today and say, it's not my thing, it's a complete betrayal. And I've lost all respect for the man at this point. It's just like he's turned his back on the independent media. The independent media basically countered the Hillary propaganda machine, and we worked our rear ends off to do it, and now Trump could care less. And maybe Tucker Carlson is right. Maybe Trump is going to basically throw his re-election. Maybe he's made a deal. Maybe Hillary is going to be the Democratic candidate, and Trump is just going to hand the White House off to her.
That may happen. I don't know where are we going to move, Mike? Where are we going to move if she becomes president of the United States?
I have no idea, and to be very honest, Claire and I would like to get back to the mainland somewhere around Indiana, but no place will be safe. There'll be no place safe. Anyway, Steve, we got. Okay, stay on the line. We got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Here we're talking with Steve Elkins, and Steve, you said you had one more thing you wanted to share with us.
Yeah, that redefining of the terms journalist. We've seen this in the past that the United States and other countries have said, well, the definition of a journalist actually is somebody who has a degree. So, people who are doing their own investigative work and finding that truth are being held, kind of like as a criminal, combatant, almost an enemy combatant. And I see them to use that against Julian Assange because I don't believe he actually has a degree in journalism, but he's doing a great service, and what he's found was the truth, and that is threatening to these people. So, he has no protections as a journalist because they'll use that against him to say you do not have an accredited degree from a university to say that you're a journalist. So I think they're going to use that against him.
Well, that's a rather thin argument because nowhere in the First Amendment that guarantees freedom of the press is that freedom contingent on any kind of a certification from a university or let alone a government license. And the issue is, it is coming on down. If Assange did in fact actively assist Manning with trying to crack a password, then he's in a lot of trouble. Had he just stuck to his guns with accepting what was leaked to him and publishing it, he would have been covered by the Nixon versus New York Times, Washington Post Supreme Court decision. So we need to find out exactly what did happen and what he actually did do.
Well, I hope he gets his day in court. I hope he's not closed off from representation, kind of like we see what they always do when they don't want this to be known to the public. They kind of corner this thing off and hush hush, and their little secret court hearings, and they come to their verdict, their decision very, very quick, and it's usually, of course, in their favor. So I hope I hope this is visual. I hope we can all see this, what happens if he goes to court.
Well, there are two mitigating circumstances. One is that Assange has a very large legal team, and they're very vocal and they're very visible. And of course, there is still WikiLeaks itself, which is not, I don't think they're going to sit idly by while we have a new star chamber emerge in the United States.
I hope so. Thank you, Michael. Appreciate it.
Thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Dustin in New Jersey. Aloha, Dustin. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Mike, did you watch, everybody's got to go on YouTube and Fox News, Newt Gingrich with Julian Assange. Mike, Newt Gingrich is like a sellout. I couldn't, I don't like Newt Gingrich, but I mean, this shows who this dude is. And Fox News, and I don't know if you watch it, it's like 5 minutes long, but, he went about how, like, he's, our people at risk, and he's going to come back. And then he goes on about Russia. Russia is an evil dictatorship, and we're great. And then, buy my new book about Russia poisoning the Congress or the Senate. And then, Mike, at the end, because you got to watch the video, the woman, because it was Steve Doocy and Brian Kilmeade, and the woman in the center,
yeah,
she goes, like, you can hear her. She goes, that's barbaric. It's so great to live in a country like ours. I mean, I couldn't believe, I'm like, my head spun around. I'm like, these people are nuts. They're nuts. They don't care about the rules or the law. They just read off a script.
Yep.
And there's going to be a secret court for Julian Assange. Because, like, if they allow him to have a public thing and he comes out and says it was Seth Rich, that crushes their whole argument. And Trump blew it. Like, You go on YouTube and it shows him saying, "I love WikiLeaks." I mean, what the heck is wrong with this guy?
I have no idea. I have no idea. And you would think that Trump's advisors around him would have said, look, during the campaign, you made a big deal about how great WikiLeaks was and everything. You can't just, ignore it now. And maybe Trump is just ignoring his advisors. And I don't know what's going on over there, but it's not really making a lot of sense here. But the whole situation is bizarro world here. I mean, Jussie Smollett is getting off for lying, and Julian Assange is getting arrested for telling the truth.
Yeah, everything, like, this is the Soviet Union now. Like, this is, like, the West is the Soviet. It's like the truth is the enemy. That's it. These people don't want the truth. Look at Theresa May today.
Yes.
Got it all. Nobody's above the law. She couldn't even follow her own people's will to get out of the PU.
Oh, she didn't want to. She didn't want to. She was a Remainer right from the get-go. And we're going to talk about this a little bit later in the show. She has accepted the EU's offer to extend the Brexit deadline all the way out to Halloween.
And Mike, I went back and watched. Remember when Sean Hannity 2 years ago had the interview with Julian Assange? It was in a couple parts.
Yes.
When Sean Hannity is on tonight, because I'm going to watch that, because I don't really watch TV, but I'm going to see if what he says now about Julian Assange, if it's even on his program, and Tucker Carlson, because it's just obvious that all these people will throw you over the waterfall. Like, it's just amazing. They'll use you and they discard you like garbage. Like, I don't think Sean Hannity is going to come to Julian Assange to back him up. But he used him when he did the interviews. You know what I mean? Like, it's amazing.
Again, I think everybody in the corporate media, I think Tucker Carlson will probably say something about this, but everybody in the corporate media needs to realize that this treatment of Julian Assange threatens all of them, because it basically says that you can only report the news that the government says you can report, or you can face extradition and prosecution on some kind of trumped-up charges.
Yeah, man, what a joke this whole system is. Rule of law and democracy. I don't believe any of it anymore, Mike. Have a good show.
All right, thanks an awful lot here. And before we take our next phone call, somebody just sent me an article confirming that supposedly Julian Assange did have dead man's switches for the WikiLeaks insurance files, and they're saying, okay, where are they? It's time for them to come on out. Back to the phones here. Miles in, let's see, is that Maine? Yeah, Maine.
Yes. How you doing, Michael? Good show. Yeah, I wanted to agree with Steve Elkins to a point, though. I mean, if this is true and what he's saying and asserting, if that were to happen, then you'd have to have a degree to have to secure your First Amendment.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And as I said before, the First Amendment makes no mention of any kind of a qualification to enjoy freedom of speech or freedom of the press. The only restriction is you got to have a press.
I think you're exactly correct. If Assange gets here and gets to court, he should assert that ruling that happened under the Nixon administration that you had mentioned a few days prior.
Well, see, that's the problem. They're not charging him with the releasing of the classified information. Supposedly, they're charging him with computer hacking and conspiracy for computer hacking.
Well, I think that might be a lot harder to prove, and from my facts that I have regarding Assange on his incident, that might be a lot more difficult.
Well, it depends on what they got Manning to say, because, I mean, Manning was taken before the grand jury, and there was a big thing about how Manning kept invoking the Fifth, and they may have gotten through to her. And,
the other thing,
I mean, coercion of witnesses is hardly new in this country. I mean, look at the history of the FBI.
Yeah. Now, the other question I had for you, Mike, is unrelated, but you were talking about vaccines yesterday, and you had mentioned two things I wanted to know. You had mentioned something that they put in vaccines that stops something else from fighting off cancer, and I wanted to know if you could give me those two ingredients again.
It's an enzyme. It's an enzyme called nagalase, and apparently there was something like, a couple of dozen bio researchers who were looking into this, saying, why is this in here? There's no legitimate therapeutic value for nagalase to be in vaccines, but what it does do is it prevents the body from using vitamin D as its own natural cancer cure. And it raises this cynical possibility that the medical industrial complex is literally trying to make us sick so that they can then get our money to make us well again.
Well, Michael, thank you so much, and I appreciate the information, and keep up the great job. And everybody, don't forget, if you got a few dollars, send it to RBN. We got to keep this going.
All right, thanks an awful lot for the kind words. We're going to let you go and switch over to Peter in Los Angeles. Aloha, Peter. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Mike, I think I, too, can be added to that list of people who have lost complete faith both in Trump and, more than that, complete faith in the entire system. But the point that I want to make here is that, in my opinion, the government of the United States exists to execute the will of the billionaires and the huge lobbies.
Yes.
It has nothing to do with us. It's there to execute the will. And by the way, the same people that own the government also own the press.
Yes.
So they don't care really about freedom of the press. They're either echoing what the government wants them to say, or the government is just telling them what to say anyways. I mean, the billionaires or whatever are telling the government what to say anyway. So what does it matter? It's all one thing.
Yes.
And that's where it is. It's almost a seamless. This is a freaking plantation.
Yes.
And it's so disheartening. And Trump is. What can I tell you? He's lamentable.
He absolutely is here, and it's more than just a loss of trust in Trump, because I lost trust in him a long time ago. The last vestige of respect I had for him vanished today with his attempt to just distance himself and say, I'm not really into WikiLeaks. That largely put him in. I hope that Assange does come out and say that it was Seth Rich and blows that narrative out of the water. I wonder if Trump will amend the prosecution if that happens. All once he's got somebody saying what needs to be said, and I believe that to be true. And if Trump would lay off a little if that happens. I think he's too stupid to anyways. But I don't think he's calling the shots on this. And I think that, like I said earlier in the show, I think the plan here is they're going to get Assange to the United States and they're going to present him with a deal. We can either put you away for a very, very long time on all these made-up charges here, or you can say that Russia hacked the DNC servers and gave you the DNC emails, and that way the Democrats have got an edge going into 2020.
I don't know the notion of Trump wanting to hand off to Hillary. I think that I don't think I would be safe, frankly, if Hillary took over, let alone Trump.
Yes.
If Hillary or the took over, I don't think anybody can afford that. But he may just be crass enough and so on that he wants his billionaire lifestyle back. He wants to get back on the Epstein Island trains and his whatever he wants to do and not have to answer to anybody. or be
Well,
restrained.
that's what Tucker Carlson was saying the other day, that, Trump got to be president, which is what he wanted to do. I mean, over the years, he was saying all the time, yeah, one day I'm going to run for president. And he got to be the president, and now he's been the president, and his attitude seems to be, all right, well, I'm just going to coast along here. He's letting Pompeo and Bolton run the foreign policy. Meanwhile, Congress is, just devolving into this almost roller derby-esque infighting. And Trump has dropped the ball on all the promises he's made to us, especially about getting out of the war zones. We're getting out of Syria, but not because Trump said to. It's because, we lost. And now we're getting ready to go into Venezuela.
His genitalia has disappeared on the border. Yeah, his genitalia has disappeared on the border.
Yes.
Thing. He's given up on that. He's gutless. He's gutless and stupid, and he's an egomaniac. However, my sister sent me a text this morning about some BDS activist who's not allowed. Trump is not allowing him in the country. I may have sent it on to you, but and she's saying, "Welcome to fascism on the Trump fascist wagon." And my retort was, "Well, we had this strutting egomaniac before Obama,
yes,
who had unlimited attention, without trial and executive privilege to kill Americans anywhere overseas and selling all our stuff, basically for campaign donations, all our intercepts to Israel on American people, giving Sinaloa." So, my comment was the fascist can has been kicked down the road pretty far even before this idiot came on board.
Well, we've been, if you go back and you look at Aaron Russo's documentary, America from Freedom to Fascism, we've been on this path for a very, very long time, and it's tied in with the creation of the private central bank and fiat currency on which we have to pay interest. We're definitely a fascist nation now. Democracy here is an illusion. 2016 kind of proved that to me.
Mike, the rise of AI and drones, and we're only a couple of cycles. You don't have to rely on the loyalty of the police force and the army anymore. Just a few sociopaths sitting at some drone control thing outside of Vegas at Nellis or something, or AI things. Billionaires could buy swarms of AI killer. It's all. You don't even have to win the loyalty of any group at all. Not the army, not the police force, nothing. There's no bounds on these guys now with the new technology.
No, there isn't, unfortunately. All right, Peter, we got to take a break for commercials. We're going to let you go, and we'll be right back after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And during the break here, I was taking a look. There's an issue. The crimes that Assange is being accused of took place back in 2010, which means the statute of limitations may have expired unless there was a specific exception, and I haven't been able to determine if there is an exception, but there may be an issue there as well. It's not like the government follows its own rules anymore anyway. All right, back to the phones. Al in West Virginia. Aloha, Al. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Michael. What happened to that rule that that law or whatever it was they made there that if you know something, say something and you be protected?
Well, they never promised you'd be protected. It was see something, say something, and it was the slogan back when they were pushing this whole war and terror meme. But very often people who see something and say something pay a very stiff price for it, and certainly Claire and I did back in 1994. Right. They should have qualified it to say, if you see something, say something, unless what you see is being carried out by somebody in the government, then shut the heck up.
That's right. And also in law, it's a felony to not if you know somebody that's breaking that's committing a felony, it's also
if you know about it and don't report it, it's called misprision.
Right. And Also, I'll tell you what I think is going on. I think that they're going to bring him back. This is the quickest way for Trump to get to the bottom of everything because he has
he's not going to get to the bottom of it. He's not going to get to the bottom of it. If he wanted to get to the bottom of it, he would have gone over to the Department of Justice and say, we're going to give this guy immunity. It doesn't matter what you do. I'm going to issue a full pardon. No, Trump is not going to get to the bottom of it. I agree with Tucker Carlson. Trump got to be the president. His ego is satisfied. He's going to coast out the rest of his term and then just hand over the White House, to the Democrat, whoever that's going to be. And unfortunately, it's looking more and more like it's going to be Hillary.
Oh, God, don't say that. Please don't say that. But
I hope I'm wrong.
I'm kind of wavering.
I hope I'm wrong.
I'm still on the teeter-totter. I'm on the teeter-totter here. 1 minute I think he does something crazy. The next minute I'm thinking, well, wow, maybe he is on our side. But then, like I said, I'm still on the teeter-totter about all that.
No. As of this morning, the way he just sort of, dumped Julian Assange and WikiLeaks, yeah, the man is a fraud. I was just watching on the Fox News where he's back to talking about, I may put troops back on the southern border. Just words. That's all we're getting from Donald Trump during his term in office is words and war. Anyway, listen, Al, we got to let you go. Got to take a break for station identification. Back with hour number 2 after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Now, yesterday we had this article saying, what the heck is UNICEF doing supporting the illegal Israeli settlements? And it had to do with UNICEF's name and logo being listed as a supporter of the Euro-Asia Interconnector, which is this European Union project to link Israel and the illegal settlements to Europe's energy grid. Well, UNICEF has come on out today and said that Euro-Asia used their logo without permission. Apparently, Euro-Asia just decided to sort of embellish their international support, and basically they fraudulently used the UNICEF logo to claim support. So that makes a lot more sense, because I can't imagine UNICEF being that overtly pro-Israel, pro-illegal settlement. Okay, down in Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis has announced that he will hold the next meeting of the Florida State Cabinet in Jerusalem at the new U.S. Embassy. So you heard that right. The business of Florida State will be conducted in a foreign country whose interests may not be entirely aligned with Florida's. So don't forget, if you say that Israel has undue influence over American politics, you're just being an anti-Semite. Over in the Koreas, Moon Jae-in is looking to try and jumpstart the U.S. and North Korea talks after this recent failed summit. And for Moon, this was a setback because Moon Jae-in has put his political legacy on the line in pursuit of better relations between the two Koreas, the so-called Sunshine Policy, the reunification policy. And unfortunately, because of the friction between the U.S. and North Korea, progress on reunification has definitely been derailed. Now, North Korea's Kim Jong-un is saying North Korea must deliver a blow to those imposing sanctions. Now, he's not talking war, so don't worry about nuclear missiles. He's basically saying that North Korea needs to make sure its economy is more self-reliant and self-sufficient, which is a really good idea, because the only reason all these countries are vulnerable to all these tariffs and sanctions is because of all this global trade. And if nations are more self-sufficient, then tariffs lack any real teeth. Remember when they threw all those sanctions and tariffs on Russia? Ooh, we're going to drive them into the ground. No, quite the contrary. It drove Russia to develop a more self-sufficient internal economy. And that makes them independent. A self-sufficient economy is a free economy. So Kim Jong-un is on the right path with that one. They're just going to work to build up North Korea's economy based on what's in North Korea. And just stop trying to do all this buying and selling across borders, especially those controlled by the United States. Apparently, they're still looking for the remains of that F-35 that crashed off Japan. And the U.S. and Japan are trying to find it. They're concerned that China and Russia are going to try and get to the main part of the wreckage, not so much to learn how to build an F-35, but to learn how not to build a fighter. So the narrative has changed. Yesterday it was, oh my goodness, they're going to get the F-35 and they're going to be able to copy it. Why would they? It's a piece of junk. But we know from those 2 reports that were issued last year, the senior officers in charge of development of the F-35 are aware of major design deficiencies that were covered over so as not to produce more cost overruns and more objection to the continuation of the program. Then there was that second report that said there were no less than 111 known Category 1 flaws. Category 1 meaning basically it's not combat ready. It's a threat to the pilot's safety. And so it's basically now if China and Russia can retrieve the remains of the F-35, they're going to learn all those vulnerabilities and how not to have them in their aircraft. And of course, the big issue is what exactly happened? We've had 2 of these now that seem to just spontaneously combust in midair. Now, we did find out that the pilot of this Japanese F-35 did manage to get a single signal out saying abort before he went off the air and his radar transponder shut down. So we'll see what's going to happen over there. All right. Getting on over to Russia, if you will. One of the reasons you might want to look at that movie Vice, it's not an exceptionally good movie, but it does document a lot, but not all, that went on in that rush to war with Iraq and the rise of Dick Cheney. And unfortunately, you're going to recognize a lot of those names as still being around today. And that's the red warning, because the same people who were pushing those Iraq war lies about weapons of mass destruction, nuclear weapons, they're going to come and, sarin and anthrax and all the rest of that, they're the ones who are now pushing Russian collusion. And they pushed Russian collusion. So why should we be surprised it turned out to be just another lie? And of course, their excuse is going to be, oh, well, it was an intelligence failure. We meant well. We really thought we had the insight. We were convinced Saddam had nuclear weapons. We're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. So there's an article that came on out from Investment Watch blog saying, for crying out loud, Donald, Brennan was the mastermind of the Russian hoax. Go after him. And that's a valid question. I mean, outside of tweeting, Trump isn't doing much of anything about the fact that there was clearly a coup d'etat against him inside the highest levels of the United States government. Now, for a lot of other countries around the world, like, for example, our good friend Saudi Arabia, the officials involved in such an attempted coup d'etat would be shorter by about maybe one head. And these individuals who took part in this attempted coup d'etat to try and orchestrate the removal of the president with the 25th Amendment by wiretapping him and then arm-twisting cabinet members to go along with it, which is where their plan fell apart. They still have their jobs. They still have their job. Why do they still have their jobs? Now, the media is trying to find some way out of yet another embarrassing mess that they've made for themselves. And there's this article that came out of the nationalinterest.org making sense of our Russiagate failure. That's the new spin. It was a failure. We weren't careful enough. We wanted to believe this was coming from people in the government. Why should we begin to doubt? And maybe we should have been a little bit more careful. Nonsense. I'm calling bovine excrement on this one. I'm sure that all of these correspondents and prostitutes knew exactly what they were doing. Because whether you talk about the conservative media or the liberal media, it's still about pushing agenda. It's not about factual reporting. Nobody in this country, nobody in the corporate media, nobody in the government wants fact-based reporting. That's why Assange is in trouble right now. It's just all spin and propaganda and, you know, winning over the hearts and minds of the American people with the best illusion. And that's all it really is. It's just like being in a real-life version of the movie The Matrix. Everything surrounding you is a manufactured lie to get you to do what those in power want you to do. Vote somebody into power that you think is really good, even though they turn out to be a flake. Send your children off to war, pay for the war, send more money to Israel, send more money to prop up Wall Street. They don't want fact-based reporting on any of this. Fact-based reporting is a threat to the state. In the age of lies, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. Now, Wikipedia, not to be confused with WikiLeaks, but Wikipedia is still trying to control the narrative that spying against Trump is a conspiracy theory, even though William Barr confirmed that, yes, Donald Trump was spied on. Now, Wikipedia has been known for quite some time to be a gatekeeper. They're a good resource for science and technical questions, little less so on medical because they're biased in favor of the medical industrial complex. They are totally compromised on issues like ClimateGate. And as this article says, they're out there saying, oh, no, there was no spying against Trump. Absolutely not. Now, Bernie Sanders is out there pushing his new health care plan, his new health care system. It's a total government takeover of the American health care system. He's calling it Medicare for All, which sounds a lot better than socialized medicine. And it will replace private insurance with government as the single payer. And Sanders has released his set of tax hike options to be paired with a proposal which totals up $16.2 trillion over the next decade. Now, this would pay for roughly half the cost of single-payer health care, which costs between $32 trillion and $36 trillion, according to estimates. Now, here's another area that Trump campaigned on. He was going to look at why medical care costs in this country were so high compared to other countries on Earth. He dropped the ball on that one as well. Now, getting on back to Bernie Sanders, right now, of all the contenders who have already declared to be candidates in 2020, Bernie Sanders is the clear leader in the polling. He has a double-digit lead, 21%. Kamala Harris and Beto O'Rourke trail at 9.9 and 8.9% respectively. So already they're talking about the superdelegates going into the convention in 2020. It's a superdelegate. This has got Hillary's fingerprints all over it. And I'm convinced, you know, barring that she has some kind of a serious medical setback, and we know her health is not good, I think she's going to step in. She dropped some hints earlier in the year where she said, yeah, she was going to run. And everybody said, oh, yeah, right. And then she, I haven't decided yet. She was going to wait for the Mueller report. Well, the Mueller report, at least in summary, is out. No word. And then Hillary came on out and said she would make her decision in the fall, depending upon whether or not there was a clear front runner. Well, there is a front runner, Bernie Sanders. And even though I think his Medicare for All plan is deeply flawed, And even though I think government control of health care is going to be a big mistake, I'll take Sanders over Hillary any day. Absolutely. Now, speaking of Hillary Clinton, this is a story that's coming out again from Investment Watch Blog. Former FBI General Counsel Jim Baker initially advocated for charging Hillary Clinton related to her mishandling of classified information before he was persuaded the investigation could not establish the requisite intent. Well, Jim Baker should have read Title 18 because intent is not required under Title 18. Now, a little bit of good news out here in Hawaii. Tulsi Gabbard's campaign has hit 65,000 donors, which qualifies her for the June debates. She will be on the stage, and we'll get a chance to really see what she's made of compared to the other candidate. I mean, I like her. I don't agree with her on the Second Amendment, obviously, but I do like her. For one thing, she knows what war is. She's served in a combat zone, which is why I think her anti-war rhetoric is genuine, and which is why I think there are going to be a lot of assets within the military-industrial complex who are dead set against letting her get anywhere in this race. But go Tulsi. Absolutely. All right, over at the House Banking Committee. This is a demonstration of why maybe we should have term limits. The House Banking Committee, led by Maxine Waters, called in the nation's top bankers on Wednesday to lecture them on greed and political correctness. And Maxine asked the bankers about what they were doing with their own loan policies to help those suffering with massive student loan debt. And the bankers just sort of blinked for a second and said, they don't make any student loans because the federal government took over the student loan program in 2010, Maxine. Really. There needs to be competency tests to be in Congress. Not just popularity contests or who's got the nicest clothes or who can do the greatest election rigging. We need competency tests. They should come on in and actually take an exam on the law and the Constitution. So this one is hugely embarrassing for Maxine, and I hope somebody keeps that video clip for the next time that she runs. All right, the first of the indictments following the Mueller probe has come on out, and it's Gregory B. Craig. He was a White House counsel in the Obama administration, and they expect he will be indicted for his work for the Russian, well, this is bad reporting. They're calling it the Russian-aligned government of Ukraine, which, no, Ukraine is not Russia-aligned. Where's this from? Zero Hedge. So Gregory Craig has served in senior legal roles for 2 Democratic presidents, apparently refused to accept a plea deal. We don't know what the deal was supposed to be about, and the matter could be presented to a grand jury for indictment. And apparently there's actually 2 charges. One, the fact that he was working for Ukraine as an unregistered foreign agent, and second, that he lied about it. Okay, you're going to love this next one, because mostly I love it here. Remember Michael Avenatti? Avenatti. Sorry, I mispronounced that. This was the attorney who formerly represented porn star Stormy Daniels and was actually briefly considered a possible 2020 candidate, the great white hope for the Democratic Party. He has been hit with a 36-count grand jury indictment, which alleges that he stole millions of dollars from his clients, committed bank fraud and perjury. Apparently, he stole $4 million from a paraplegic client. And the money was used to fuel this lavish lifestyle that had no limits, including mortgage payments on a multi-million-dollar home in Laguna Beach and buying a private plane. So, of course, he's qualified to run for the White House. Definitely qualified to be a politician. Florida Representative Matt Gaetz has introduced a resolution in the House calling for the resignation of House Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff over his handling of the Russian collusion hoax. Now, Schiff has faced repeated calls from Republicans to step down from his post after using Robert Mueller's investigation to espouse conspiracy theories and promoting his own position as one of authority to promote false accusations against the president. Now, Schiff has said repeatedly that he refuses to resign. He can be impeached. But isn't it amazing how shameless these people are? Been caught in a whopper of that magnitude, the Trump-Russia collusion hoax, and just going on out and saying, yes, I'm the authoritative figure. Whoops, it was never really there. Oh, well, too bad. I'm not going anywhere. I'm here to stay. All right, we're going to take another break for commercials, and we'll be right back after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And this next story, I can't say I'm surprised about it. It's actually a confirmation of something that I've been concerned about for a while. And as you know, right now, our country is more polarized than ever before. But both liberals and conservatives are convinced that their ideas and principles are the best, and you will do what we say or else. But a recent survey by Reuters casts a bit of doubt on how well people really know their own minds and understand the political principles they say they adhere to. Reuters poll is showing that many Americans base their views on whether a particular authority figure holds them. And therein lies the doom of our society. You know, I believe in human-caused global warming because Al Gore says so. I don't need to look at the science and the facts. Al Gore says it must be true. Now, over at the White House, Trump is going to host a screening of the pro-life film Gosnell, showing his solidarity with the pro-life movement. And I'm sure that the liberals are going to be screaming about that one. Now, Gosnell tells the true story of Philadelphia abortionist Dr. Kermit Gosnell's arrest, trial, and conviction for the first-degree murder of 3 born-alive babies and the involuntary manslaughter of patient Carmenaya Mongar. And it's based on court transcripts and interviews. And it basically goes into the original trial. And it's just really ugly and very, very graphic. And it's why, you know, the pro-choice people are just opposed to it. And they're trying to keep people from seeing it. And it's not just that one. There's the pro-life movie Unplanned. And during this congressional hearing before the Senate Subcommittee on the Constitution, in which social media is being questioned on, why are you so biased? Why are you banning things? Twitter was taken to task for suspending the account of the pro-life movie Unplanned during its opening weekend. Now that is a major, major blow. So, again, Paul Craig Roberts came out with an article, and it's worth reading in its entirety. And it's called America is No Longer a Nation. And I'm going to read you the first 2 paragraphs of it and encourage you to go and hunt it down. It is linked to whatreallyhappened.com. And just read the rest of it for yourself. Because what he's saying is exactly the same thing I've been feeling. The America in which I grew up and lived my early adult life was a nation. Over the course of my life, I have watched my country turn into a Tower of Babel. Homogeneity, I can't believe I'm stumbling over this. Homogeneity and shared values permitted us to understand one another. That doesn't mean that there was uniformity or that things were perfect. A Baptist wasn't a Catholic. A WASP was not a black laborer. A female was not a male. Blacks and poor whites had a hard time becoming middle class, but it could be done. It was possible for middle-class people to become well-off, but difficult to become rich. Immigration was controlled, and the reduction of inflows had helped the Irish and Italians to integrate into society. Police were helpful and didn't burst into homes with gun blazings or rough you up at traffic stops. On important issues, compromises could be reached and reforms implemented. English was the language. If you telephoned a service provider, utility, or bank, you quickly were connected to a real person capable of handling every aspect of whatever you were calling about. Today, you wait through the Spanish language option for the robo-voice listing the options that might have something to do with the reason for your call. The companies save money and make profits by imposing their service costs on the customers. And he goes on to say, technology seems to have worsened the functionality of society. Absolutely. It hasn't been the blessing we were all told it was going to be. It makes things cheaper for the corporations because they can now throw the workload onto us. And it's not just call centers. Look at software development. Companies that produce software have scaled back on the internal quality control departments. And they'll release software that's got problems, and they'll just wait for the end users to find the problems and report them, and they'll get fixed in the next patch. And it makes software maintenance updates less expensive for the software company and turns the end user into unpaid quality assurance workers for those software corporations. Now, this one is just a little bit sick. Apparently, the Boston Globe got itself into a little bit of trouble. It published an op-ed from a man who said he regretted not urinating on a neoconservative pundit's food and encouraging waiters to tamper with Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen's food. Now, the Globe has since pulled it back. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're going to talk about the economic news now. And we're going to start off with this article from the Daily Bell. And it basically says, name one time a government program accomplished its goal. And this actually, I saw, got posted around a lot. And it's talking about the situation over in Illinois. And right now, Illinois has the worst credit rating of any state. It's got $8 billion in outstanding bills and a $3.2 billion deficit in just next year's budget. And the worst part is the $250 billion they need to pay their state pensions. The article says that for normal people, when they have debt, they tighten their belt, they save money, they cut expenses. But instead, Illinois just goes up to the taxpayers and says, we just need more. You know, we just need more. I wrote an article a while back. In fact, I think I recently linked it once again to whatreallyhappened.com. And the analogy that I used was a hamburger stand. And you go into this hamburger restaurant and you order the hamburger, and the proprietor says it will cost you this much money. And you pay that much money, you get the hamburger. The hamburger's really very good, no complaints. And then the proprietor comes back and says, look, I'm sorry, it actually cost me a lot more to produce that hamburger than I had previously estimated, and I need another $1.50 from you. Would you pay it? Of course not. Basically, you cease doing business there and you find a hamburger place under better management. But with government, it's just like that first hamburger stand. You go on in and you are told that it will cost you so much money for this many benefits, and you pay your money and you get the benefits and you don't have a complaint with the benefits. And then the government comes back and says, well, look, I'm sorry, it cost a lot more to produce the benefits than we thought, and we need more money from you. That's the situation that we're in right now. Over in New York, again, the same thing. It's the law of the hammer. And if you don't know what I mean by that, the law of the hammer says if you give a small child a hammer, everything they encounter needs pounding. Well, that could be extracted to the law of the tax, which is that if you give a government the power to tax, everything they encounter needs taxation. Now, New York City is in serious economic trouble. They've got $1 billion budget shortfall. And they came on out with this pied-à-terre tax. which was a tax on people who owned second homes there in New York City. And to nobody's surprise, people began to sell their second homes in New York City. And rather than take a lesson from that, New York has passed the mansion tax. And this is over and above the existing property taxes in the existing mansion tax. And so people are moving away. That's how New York chased Amazon away. And it's not just New York. New Jersey lost hundreds of millions of its yearly tax revenue when they chased away just one wealthy taxpayer who relocated to Florida. But instead of reversing the tax after that mistake, New Jersey raised taxes even more to make up for the shortfall. Now, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to realize there is a crisis point coming where there is simply no more left to tax. And for much of the country, we're already there. You've seen all those commercials all over TV for tax resolution services and the Fresh Start program and all the rest of it. When people are done paying for their increased rent, higher food prices, higher gas prices, there's nothing left over. People are tapped out. Now, you may want to think about hitting the big box store tomorrow and stocking up on the essentials here, because apparently, as of tomorrow, there will be a truckers' strike. And I'm hoping it will not go on for too long. But apparently the truckers are going to shut down their rigs tomorrow in protest. And it's over regulatory problems and a lack of pay. And a lot of people who were truck drivers are leaving the trucking profession because they can make a more steady income and be at home working even a simple fast food job for a lot of areas of our economy right now, working harder for much, much less. Okay, Walmart actually came out with a statement saying that their employees are happy that robots are taking their jobs. Really? Absolutely. Now, self-checkouts have been replacing human employees for quite some time. I refuse to use them. And Walmart is deploying robots now to carry out mundane tasks like mopping its floors and tracking inventory as it seeks to cut down on labor costs after raising wages last year. And I'm opposed to this use of automation. I'm sure the robots do a great job at mopping the floors and tracking the inventory. But if people do not have the means to trade their labor for decent wages and salaries, then they're not going to be going back into Walmart to buy any of those things on the shelves. You can see into the future where this is headed. With all this automation, the factories are automated, the malls are automated, and you're going to have this scene of the future shopping malls where all these robots are standing around with absolutely nothing to do because there were no people coming by with money to buy all the products also made by robots. This is a very short-sighted policy, and I'm stunned that nobody in our federal government seems to be aware of this, or at least they're not talking about it. You cannot have a functioning economy without a solid working and middle class to just, create the new wealth to pour into the bottom of that economic pyramid. You can't just keep sucking the money up to the very top of the pyramid and expect it to stand there. It's going to get top heavy. Right now, Americans are tapped out. Debt is maxed out. Delinquencies are on the rise. Layoffs are on the rise. Claire and I had to go to the shopping mall down the hill the other day. And we don't go to the mall that much. And it was a shock how many empty retail spaces there are. And we're still waiting to see if the Sears that's down there is going to stay open, because that's an anchor tenant. And without those anchor tenants to lure customers in, those little boutique shops along the mall itself, they lose customers and they go out of business. But consumer credit card debt continues to rise. And of course, the advice would be don't do that. Pay cash or do without. But there are a lot of people who are so stretched right now, they're being forced to use their credit cards just to stay alive, plunging them into that debt trap even further and further, with no jobs out there to pay their way out. This is a dead end. There is a crash coming. And anybody who says otherwise is naive or living in a dream world, or they're trying to sell you something. All right, let's grab ourselves a phone call. Bill in Wisconsin, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, I'd like to say aloha, but we've got 50-mile-an-hour winds, 11 inches of snow so far. So I'm a believer in controlled weather. I know you're not, but I know that they've been fooling with it for years. I would recommend you see a DVD called Franken Skies.
Okay, Bill, let me ask you a question. If the weather is being controlled, then why would they be hitting, this country in April with all of this snow and rain and flooding? They're destroying our nation's food supply. That doesn't seem to make any sense. If they were able to control
and that's what the
Bill, if they were able to control the weather, wouldn't they have like sun out there and warm weather, a good growing climate?
Yeah, but the deep state doesn't want to feed the American people no more than they do want, the economy to run properly. You say it's going to go in the white show here by the door.
Bill, there's a great deal of money to be made off of feeding the American people. And there's a great Bill, my turn. Never mind. Okay. It's pushing an agenda. Okay. Just common sense. There's a great deal of money to be made feeding the American people, and especially in having leftover agriculture that can be exported. That's something the deep state wants. Money, more money. There's a great deal of danger in a starving American population, which we may have on our hands later this year. Now, this whole idea about all this cold weather that's all over the country, and we got a cold snap here, it's basically showing Al Gore and the human-caused global warming cult were wrong. They were flat out wrong. And everybody who worked with them to sell you this idea that humans were warming the planet and that you had to pay a carbon tax and obey a global environmental authority, they're all exposed as liars. As big liars as the Russia-Trump collusion liars over the last 2 years. Now, I know there have been experiments in weather control on a limited scale, like cloud seeding. But when you're talking about across the entire United States of America and the wind patterns, no. It's beyond our technology to do that. Okay. Speaking of food shortages here, apparently hundreds of millions of pigs are feared dead from swine fever. And so the price of pork is now on its way up. Between that and all the lost crops over there in the Great Plains area, the upper Midwest, and now NOAA is saying because of this second cyclone bomb, the flooding is going to continue into July. That is a major, major food supply problem on the horizon. And the Democrats are too busy screaming about Trump's tax returns to even notice it. And the Republicans are too busy getting ready for the 2020 campaign. That's the big problem with Congress as it is today. There's so much infighting going on. They're actually oblivious to what's going on out here in the United States of America. There are some major, major problems that need to be looked at and addressed decisively. Donald. All right, let's go back to the phones here. Dan in Illinois, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi, Mike. Yeah, talking about store closings here in northern Illinois, there's a Kohl's over by me. I was checking out once. I looked at this clipboard that was at the counter. They had to make $32,000 in sales that day to justify the store.
That sounds about right.
And I'm like, how do they do that? Because I bought 2 shirts, and the store was kind of empty, for that time of day. It was kind of early, mid-afternoon, I guess you could say. But $32,000 in sales to justify the store.
Yeah,
That's what they,
every
obviously
retail operation, the manager always has that number. We have to do this much in sales, or we're heading to be close. And we've been talking about retail Mageddon for quite a long time. And we're seeing these iconic stores like Toys R Us is gone now. Sears is still struggling. And as I said the other day when we were walking through our local mall, it was just, and Claire and I are aware how bad things are, and it was still a shock to see how many empty retail spaces there were.
Yeah, I see it all over here in these little strip malls, vacancies for 5-6 years now. And as far as Sears goes, they closed the one in the town nearby me. So where can I go to a Sears now if I wanted to? There's nothing around here. I have to drive 25, 30 plus miles to get to a Sears. If they, it's unbelievable how they're handling this,
Well, they're handling it by, the way the old Soviet Union did. They just keep putting on out, the economy is great. Unemployment is only 2.5%. We can welcome in, all the illegal immigrants and give them work permits. And, the rate of inflation isn't all that bad. And it's all propaganda and rigging. And what you need to do, all of you, is just go on out and walk around or drive around your own community, looking at it as if you were a tourist visiting it for the first time, and just take a look and see if it looks like that's a healthy economy or a healthy town where you are. Okay?
Yeah, they had a Target closed, but they got lucky. They put a Big R store. It's like a Farm and Fleet type deal. But
yeah.
It's actually better than Farm and Fleet. They got lucky on that one. They came in and took that space. But they got a Sears, sell refrigerators and stuff, that type of store down there. I don't know how, I never see no cars there when I go over there.
Well, our Sears at the mall is still open, but just down the road from it, there had been this Sears appliance outlet store, and it's now closed. It's been turned into a church.
Oh. Well, I'll let you go.
All right, thanks an awful lot. And we're going to start with Layla in Canada. And Layla, I'm clearly going to have to take you through the commercial break here. So what's on your mind?
I hadn't intended to call in today, but that comment by, I think his name is Bill, about climate control. I don't think it's climate control. I think there have been so many different countries experimenting with the ionosphere, and also the satellites that are circling the Earth. I think you would agree that our skin on our bodies is our first line of defense, and it keeps everything inside intact and in balance. Essentially, the different layers that surround our planet are intended as a form of protection from both things escaping outwards and things coming inward.
Okay, Layla, I got to put you on hold.
Okay.
Don't hang up. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're talking with Layla up in Canada. And Layla, what you really need to look at is the amount of energy that is involved in the total global weather system. And that gives you an indicator of how much energy would be required to significantly alter it. Now, I know that many nations have been conducting experiments by bouncing radio waves off the ionosphere. My understanding is, at least as far as the one in Alaska is concerned, it was an attempt to create an over-the-horizon imaging radar, which didn't really go all that well.
I'm sorry, but I tend to, I know he himself acknowledges that he's not a scientist, Nick Begich. But I find him highly credible, and he backs up everything, all of his contentions, with research from credible scientific papers or findings. But it's even more than that. We know that there is a great deal of concern about the growing population on this planet.
Yes.
When you want to cull the herd, so to speak, and let's face it, humans are a herd animal. When you want to cull the herd, the first thing you do is you make sure that they're enclosed. And I know people hate it when I refer back to history, but the first biological warfare that is known goes back to the time of the Jebusites or the Hittites.
Yes.
What they did was cut off the food supply to a region they had that was surrounded by a wall they couldn't penetrate. So they waited outside in the encampment. They cut off their food supply until eventually the people were starving. Then they left a poisoned sheep outside the gates. People came in, brought in the sheep. It's almost like the Trojan War story.
Yeah.
They brought in the sheep and they became poisoned. Ultimately, they were obviously very vulnerable. So you start first by poisoning the food supply little by little with chemicals that we may not be aware of and that cannot be measured or detected. And then you start changing the things that influence the productivity of agriculture, such as weather.
Okay, well, can I insert a comment here?
Sure.
Because you were talking about culling the herd, and I understand culling the herd, it's a ranching term. But using weather to cull the human herd doesn't make any sense. When a rancher culls the herd, they don't burn down the ranch in the process. And if there was a deliberate program of depopulation, the goal would be to get rid of the human beings while leaving all of the other assets untouched behind, not caught up and destroyed in the process.
If you starve the herd, they ultimately die. And the way you starve them is that you either poison their food very slowly, or you simply stop giving them food. As someone who was involved with horses, I watched very carefully the impact on horses when they started eating pelleted feeds that had unknown ingredients. And then what they did to one another when they were denied the hay that they needed, they started eating one another's. But I think
that's exactly my point. That's exactly my point.
Effect.
That's exactly my point.
It's a domino effect.
Okay, we got to take a break for station identification. Thank you very much for the phone call, Layla. We'll be back with hour number 3 after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, hour number 3. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And to basically finish up what Layla and I were talking about, depopulation programs, the goal again is to reduce the human population while not damaging the infrastructure without tearing the place up. And the idea of imposing mass starvation deliberately, you're going to have food riots, you're going to have stuff being broken. You may wind up with a depopulated city, but the city is going to be in serious condition, requiring huge investment to repair. Now, the known depopulation attempts are much more covert, and I'm talking about these vaccine campaigns that turn out to actually sterilize the women that these medications are given to, because then they simply don't conceive another generation. And the older generation passes away, the population is reduced, and everything around the buildings, the streets, the infrastructure is left intact for exploitation and use by maybe somebody else. Alrighty, the Center for Investigative Journalism has issued their statement regarding the arrest of Julian Assange, and basically saying, whatever your view of its philosophy of radical transparency, WikiLeaks is a publisher. Any charges now brought in connection with that material or any attempt to extradite Mr. Assange to the United States for prosecution under the deeply flawed cudgel of the Espionage Act of 1917 is an attack on all of us. And they're absolutely correct, although what the United States claims they're extraditing him for is conspiracy and computer hacking. Now, getting on back to the economic news. The crypto market from December 2017 until today has lost $640 $48 billion with a B dollars. Now, some of the insiders and so forth made out like bandits. Most people did not. A lot of cities, a lot of even countries are getting ready to ban cryptocurrency because of the high costs of the cryptocurrency mining in terms of electricity. And all these little machines churning away in the back rooms trying to Bitcoin mine. It's straining the existing infrastructure. Okay, let's take a phone call. Jim in New York. Aloha, Jim. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Oh, hi, Mike. Now, it seems like there's a game being played on the public. It seems like the left and the right are being played against each other. You have the insane liberals epitomized by Alexandria Cortez, and it seems that drives middle America into the arms of who? The Republicans.
Yes.
And the neocon Republicans. So it's kind of a bit distressing that, that seems that's our choice between insane liberals, and it's sad to say the Republican Party, including Trump, is controlled by the neocons and Israeli advocates.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So it's very distressing. It's where do you go? I don't know. Frankly, I don't know which is worse. I mean, the loony left, they didn't start the neocon wars. That was mainly the Republican neocon
well,
establishment.
that's what the name neocon means, the neoconservatives.
Yes. Yes. So it's kind of like a game is being played. It pushes middle America towards into the arms, if you will, of neocon Republicans and Democrats. Of course,
Okay.
there's many neocons in the Democratic Party as well. So I don't know. Frankly, I don't know who's worse. Now, at least the loony left. If you want to ruin America, ruin it. But why do we got to destroy innocent countries like Libya, Iraq, and possibly soon to be Syria and Iran?
Oil.
Oh,
and oil revenues.
Yeah.
All these wars are about reasserting the United States post-World War II global hegemony. That's what this is all about.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I've always, it seems Trump, I hate to say it, he's a neocon. He said great things on the campaign, but by his actions so far and by the people around him.
Yeah. He's surrounded by neocons.
Yeah.
And from all appearances, he's just letting Mike Pompeo and John Bolton run America's foreign policy.
Yeah. So, forget what he said. He said great things on the campaign, but here we are. It's like we got the third Bush administration.
Yeah, I'm afraid so. Well, it's a continuation of a process because presidents may come and presidents may go, but the war machine seems to go on forever, as do the money junkies.
People, particularly on the alt-right, they have to wake up. That's it. I mean, you had your hope. It was worth the roll of the dice. I don't blame people for voting for Trump. But you got to recognize a problem when you have it. And we have a problem. Trump's beholden to the neocons in Israel. And I think he's going to win again. I think, if anything, As long as he does what Israel wants, I think Trump will win in 2020.
Not without massive election fraud. I mean, because no liberals are going to vote for Donald Trump, and Trump has basically burned his own base, especially today with that thing about Assange. I'm sure there's a lot of people who are just absolutely disgusted with him about that. Trump dropped the ball on vaccine safety. He dropped the ball on making our elections honest. He dropped the ball so far on that southern border. We're still mired in these wars all across the globe, and he's getting ready to start a new one in Venezuela.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
He promised he was going to look into why medical costs were so high in this country. That hasn't happened.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, to me, the major issue has always been the wars, and it's very disturbing. And people got to wake up. People got to stop focusing on Pelosi and Cortez and Omar. Watch Trump. Watch Mike Pence, Bolton. These guys are the real danger.
They definitely are. But Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is so much fun.
She's fun, but she's she's a freshman congressman. She's not running the reins of power like Bolton and Pence. Those are the guys you should be worried about.
Well, I am worried about them, and I'm keeping an eye on them. But Alexandria, of course, is a case study in a manufactured candidate and the dangers thereof. I mean, finally, the Democrats have their version of Sarah Palin. I mean, that's how bad it is.
Yeah. Yeah, but it seems, like I said earlier in my call, they use these lightning rods to drive people into the arms of the neocons. Seems it's just a game. I feel they're playing a game on us, but we'll see. But thanks for taking my call, Mike. Have a good show.
All right. Thanks an awful lot for the phone call. We're going to let you go, and we're going to do a shout out to our honor affiliates who are just now rejoining the network. Getting on back to the economic news, Boeing, even as it continues to reel from the scandal over the 737 MAX, is getting ready to build a new jet specifically designed to cater to China's One Belt, One Road. And this is a plane that sort of fits into these medium-range routes where the 737 is too small and the 787 is too large and costly to fly. So they're just custom building a jet for this niche market. Let's talk about immigration and the wall and so forth. There is a wave of migrants from Haiti, Africa, and Asia have appeared at Chiapas. They are petitioning the government of Mexico for transit visas, which would give them the legal authority to basically walk across Mexico or be bused or be put on trains to get to the United States southern border. Now, if Mexico, in fact, continues to issue these transit visas, that shows they're not serious about stopping this problem, and Trump should go back to his original promise of just shutting down the border, including commerce. Now, earlier today on Fox, Trump was out there saying, I may send troops down to the southern border. Tucker Carlson came on out and said it point blank. The United States has troops in 158 countries, but none on our southern border? And why are so many people in our political system so opposed to defending America's border? Well, the Democrats want the guaranteed Democrat votes. The Republicans seem to think that this flood of workers will keep wages and salaries down, which is true. And of course, all of this plays into the hands of the New World Order, one world government globalists who want all the world's populations blended together. They want to take all of the world's people, put them in this little blender and hit puree, and then pour them back out onto a planet without any borders. And they think that's going to be cool. Now, as I mentioned earlier in the show, believe it or not, Brexit has been delayed until Halloween. And apparently Jean-Claude Juncker is furious at Macron, who had something to do with pushing Britain into this lengthy delay. And apparently EU unity is definitely strained by this latest development. Okay, the Prime Minister is facing fury after he accepted the EU's offer of a delay until Halloween and definitively stopped the clock on a no-deal withdrawal happening on Friday. The 6-month extension was a compromise solution thrashed out by EU leaders after French President Macron dug in against a longer delay lasting into 2020. As well he should. I mean, this whole thing about a delay. They could delay and then delay and they could delay and basically negate Brexit entirely simply by delaying it into the future. Well, we're going to delay it until the year 2525. I'm sure by then we'll have worked out the details. But it's a betrayal of Brexit, and the British people ought to be very, very upset. In fact, I'm surprised I'm not seeing yellow vests out on the street. And I think the British people are getting the message that their democracy is gone because they're not getting what they voted for. Out in Nevada, Cliven Bundy had filed a lawsuit seeking to have 59 million acres of federal land within Nevada's borders declared state property. And the judge, Circuit Court Judge Jim Crockett, threw the case out saying it's simply delusional to think that land within the boundaries of Nevada belongs to the state of Nevada. And of course, this judge is clearly not familiar with the Enclave Clause of the Constitution, which says that the federal government may not own land other than what is underneath federal buildings and federal facilities like airports, harbors, and military bases. Now, granted, there are a lot of military bases inside Nevada, but it doesn't cover the entire thing. But we're seeing this growing encroachment of federalization of states' lands. Those public lands are your heritage. It belongs collectively to you. And of course, this whole Cliven Bundy situation got started when Cliven Bundy said, I have grazing rights. My family's had grazing rights on these public lands. And the federal government came on in and said, no, you can't graze your cattle there any longer because there's an endangered turtle. And actually shot and killed some of Bundy's cattle. Now, not too long ago, there was this story out of Virginia where this 6th grade student, Bella Moscato, was given a homework assignment by her teacher to write about somebody she feels is a hero. And Bella decided to pick President Trump. But the teacher basically came on over and said, no, you can't use Trump. You have to use somebody else. And at the same time, another student was allowed to use former President Obama as their hero. Well, this has prompted a huge reaction where the father of the student has just exploded, and there's a threatened lawsuit. And it is, I agree, inappropriate for teachers to be doing this kind of indoctrination. But we know that the liberals have basically taken over the education system for that very purpose, to brainwash future generations. All right, over in Phoenix, Arizona, there was this individual was seen stalking an 11-year-old girl, came up from behind her, grabbed her arm, pulled it behind her back, put his arm over her face, and started to drag her away. Fortunately, there was a nearby witness who was carrying a gun, and the suspect ran westbound. The police still haven't caught him. But again, we have a right to defend ourselves. Eric Swalwell, as you know, is running for president, and he's running on a gun ban platform. And he's campaigning on a plan to ban and buy back guns. Well, you can't buy them back. They're not yours in the first place. And this has already prompted a huge reaction in social media saying, my guns are not for sale. Some were even a little bit more testy, saying, come and take it. And I'm a firm believer in the Second Amendment. I also think that everybody who has a gun ought to go through gun safety training so that they understand it's not a toy. It is a tool, and it has to be handled with respect. Arguably, there are people who should not be allowed to have guns, like convicted felons or people who are on prescription psychiatric medication. But again, when you have people out there with a gun with bad intent, and they think there's nobody else around them carrying a gun, they're going to behave one way. If they're out there with a gun and realize that maybe 1/3 to 1/2 of the people around them also carry guns, they're going to behave a little bit differently. Do you know why the gunfight at the OK Corral is such an historic event? Because it was unusual. It was rare. Contrary to the media portrayal of the wild, wild west, where everybody's out there shooting guns, and the wild, wild west was actually very peaceful, far more peaceful than the eastern industrial cities, if you remember the story about the gangs of New York. And that's why the gunfight at the OK Corral made the history books. Nobody'd seen anything like that before. Everybody wore a gun in a holster out there in the west. Do you know why? So that if they were thrown from their horse, they could shoot the horse and not be dragged to death. That's where that originated. It wasn't so that they could stand there and fast draw and shoot at each other. And by the way, that little scene that you see in movies, including Silverado, of the two opponents standing at opposite ends of Main Street doing the fast draw on each other, it never, ever actually happened in history. Made up by Hollywood. We're going to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're talking about guns and gun control. And apparently up in Oregon, they just passed a gun control bill, and 45 pages of amendments were added just the night before. This thing is so hysterically restrictive that pepper spray is a felony. And I thought the whole point of pepper spray was it's something that you used if you didn't want to have a gun. But I guess up in Oregon, they want everybody completely, totally disarmed, except, of course, the criminals. All right, we're going to take some phone calls now. James in Sacramento, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Sure. Well, Michael, you just totally depressed me. I was looking at moving to Oregon.
Well,
and trying to get the hell out of California.
I don't blame you.
But, yeah, California's a cesspool. I mean, if you got it, oh my God, I just went blank. I'm an old man. I'm like you. I'll get old.
Okay.
But you were talking about something.
Okay, you told our call screener something about back and spine.
Yeah, degenerative disc disease. Yeah, and that was actually something I have written down here to make sure I tried to keep track of what I'm talking about. You know, I don't know what Claire is going through, if she's got osteoporosis or...
No, thankfully not yet. I mean, she's getting close, obviously, at her age, but she's not considered osteoporotic yet. Now, the good news is, from the doctor's meeting yesterday, the news was very good. The issue was she'd had an MRI, and the doctor who interpreted the MRI said there was some kind of a mass anterior to where the spinal fracture had taken place that could be a massive infection, an aneurysm, possibly even cancer, and of course we're all freaked out. Went for a second MRI. Yesterday when we went on in, the doctor said, no, there's no mass, and apparently the guy who read the first MRI goofed or turned the wrong knob on the computer or something like that. So Claire is still dealing with pain, but it's purely mechanical, and you know, we're dealing with that now. So the news is was pretty much good.
Okay, well, yeah, 'cause I know women get osteoporosis way before men do.
Yes.
Or if men even do it at all. Yeah. But that's what I'm actually, I've got spinal degeneration. and that's the best thing they can ever say. They won't diagnose anything further than that. And it's
well, the reality is that
I mean, your spine kind of takes a hit.
yeah, it does. It does. I used to ride motocross in my wild youth.
Yeah, I can understand that. I mean, but they won't really diagnose me about what's really going on, and other than the fact that one doctor told me about the degeneration. It was I forget what they called it. Something about macular degeneration or something in the spine.
Yes.
And once it starts, it's kind of one of those things that kind of never gets better. And that's why they don't want to do any surgery on me. They, because they're like, well, it's not going to help you.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know. It's
all right.
weird.
Well, first of all, I wanted to do a double check here. Macular degeneration is a disease of the eye, not of the spine. And in any event, spinal surgery is the last resort. It's absolutely the last resort. Anyway, I'm not a doctor. I played one once in a movie, but I'm not one to be giving you medical advice on this.
Yeah, I stayed at the Holiday Inn last night.
All right. Well, listen, James, we're going to let you go. Thanks an awful lot for the phone call. And we've got another caller waiting on the line. But I'm going to leave that caller until after the next commercial break here. Now, David Hogg is out there again, trying for his 15 minutes of fame, claiming that President Donald Trump supports terrorism against black churches because Trump had not tweeted about 3 historically black churches that recently burned down in Louisiana. And I think David just jumped the shark in his desperate desire to remain relevant to any of us. Okay, so, wow. Over in the Midwest, it's just amazing. This is April 11th. They just got 30 inches of snow. And NOAA is warning that the flooding through that whole that Mississippi drainage area could extend into July. That is basically wiping out the farming season. And even after the water recedes, you don't know what condition the farmland is going to be in. Could be covered with sand. The topsoil could have been washed away. Could be bedrock. This is an epic, epic disaster, and nobody seems to want to be paying attention to it. Anyway, we got to take a break for commercials. Back with another phone call and more about human-caused global warming. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to go back to the phones to Alan in Iowa. Aloha, Alan. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Oh, hey, Mike. Hey, did you see the picture that they published of that Israeli spacecraft that took a picture of the Earth? Doesn't that look kind of photoshopped or something? It just looks a little too perfect to me to be real.
Well, I have not seen that photo, so I really can't tell. And, of course, creating planet Earths in CGI is very easy. But, if you're already out there by the moon, why would you bother?
Yeah, it's just, and then they have this, small country. I mean, if you look at it, it's kind of like false advertising to me because it just, and I got that off RT.com is where I saw the photo published, supposedly from that spacecraft.
Yes.
But anyway, if you ever get a chance, it's kind of like on the front page. I know you're a NASA guy, so I figured you'd probably have some good insight about it. I just wanted to make one more comment I was very disappointed in Trump today on that WikiLeaks. He acts like, WikiLeaks? I forgot his exact comment, but, during candidate Trump was like, I love WikiLeaks. I love them. But now he acts like he's never heard of them. So anyway, that's a comment on what I was very disappointed in that today.
Okay, well, I'm looking at that photo right now, everybody who puts up a spacecraft, they put banners and stuff on it. When we sent the Vikings to Mars in 1976, it had American flags on it in full view of the cameras. Again, it does look like, it looks okay to me. In any event, it doesn't matter because, unfortunately, tragically, the engines stopped working 10 kilometers from the surface of the moon, and it hit the moon very hard, 130 meters per second. And it happened on the live feed in the presence of Netanyahu. And I may not agree with Israel's government, but I have a lot of sympathy for these flight controllers and all the people who built this spacecraft and privately funded it and got it out there. And, you know, what a heartbreak it has to be. And so, you know, I hope they get a chance to try again. What can I tell you?
Yeah, no, I love it when we go to space. It's money better spent than on weapons, that's for sure. You know, so I do hope they try again. Anybody that makes it to space and gets us off this planet is going to really help mankind.
Yeah, well, absolutely here. And again, you know, I was rooting for these guys. I was really rooting for them. This would have brought the number of nations that have successfully soft landed on the moon to 4. That being Russia, the United States, China, and now, well, almost, unfortunately, Israel. But I'm hoping that they will try again. Okay.
Well, thanks. I was just kind of seeing what you thought of it, because it looked to me like that flag was hanging on nothing. That, you know,
it's not a flag,
like
it's a plaque. It's not a flag, it's a plaque.
Yeah, it looked to me like it wasn't attached to anything.
I'm sure, well, there may have been a bracket behind it. I don't know. I didn't really study the structure of the spacecraft itself. I was just out here, you know, with my little flag saying, "Go spacecraft." You know. Anyway, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go and get on back to human-caused global warming. Apparently, the BBC, even as snow and ice and flooding continue to batter the planet, BBC has launched a chat bot that will help users learn about human-caused global warming in weekly conversations on Facebook Messenger. And apparently subscribers will get an alert every Wednesday inviting them to explore topics from rising temperatures to new ways of tackling global warming. I'm going to bet they don't get a lot of subscribers on that one. Getting on back here to the United States, Winter Storm Wesley continued to cause trouble today. Schools were closed or delayed for hours, power outages, and hundreds of flight cancellations. South Dakota's Governor Kristi Noem ordered the state government offices be closed in 54 counties because of the weather. Ellsworth Air Force Base was closed to all but essential personnel. More than 85,000 customers were without power in South Dakota, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Iowa as of 12:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time Thursday. And ice was causing much of the problems in Minnesota. Jackson County in Minnesota reported more than 100 power poles had been knocked down. So basically, the plains and the Midwest are being hammered with blizzard conditions, and it's just insane. And they're talking about how, you know, Tuesday there was a high of 78 degrees in Denver, and then just 2 days later, whiteout conditions. It just came on down and just hit. Heavy snow is about to descend on parts of Minnesota. They're predicting probably about at least a foot and a half. So right now the United States has been hit with $2 billion disasters this year. The bomb cyclone that brought heavy snow, blizzard conditions, and major flooding to the Midwest in March. And the other was the severe storm that struck the Northeast, Southeast, and Ohio Valley rented lips in late February, and it's only April. It is April. We should be into springtime weather, and we're not. This is another indicator that we are, in fact, heading into a new Maunder minimum and a new little ice age. Now, we know about the Maunder minimum. The sun has been very quiet. Hardly any sunspots on the sun this year. And that's a giveaway. Over in California, because of the torrential rains they had last year, they have declared an end to their 5-year drought. But rather than undertake infrastructure projects to collect and store water during the wet years, which would be the smart thing to do, Governor Jerry Brown has signed into law a new Water Conservation Act that will limit each California citizen to just 50 gallons of water per person per day by the year 2050. Basically, this is a feel-good law because California doesn't have the money to fix the aqueducts and the reservoirs. So Brown said in a statement, we have efficiency goals for energy in cars, and now we have them for water. Estimates vary, but each person uses about 80 to 100 gallons of water per day. So California's solution to the failing infrastructure is to say you can only use half as much water as you did before. Another good reason to get out of California. I'm wondering what Governor Brown is going to do about all those swimming pools up in the Beverly Hills or Bel Air or out there along the Malibu coast. Now, a lot of people are talking about this revelation that Google has a news blacklist targeting conservative sites. And this was not something that was algorithmically generated. It is basically something that Google executives sat down and said, well, I don't like this outlet, and I don't like this outlet, and I don't like this outlet. And if your website or your name is on that list, it basically means you will not show up in any of the top-level searches or any of the trending or anything. You're buried in the background. They're not deplatforming you. Google can truthfully say, yes, you're still on our servers, but you're definitely being hidden. Now, I haven't seen the complete list. It doesn't appear that anybody has published it. I don't know if whatreallyhappened.com or Republic Broadcasting are on it or not. But again, this is way too much power over the public discourse for one company to be holding at this point. Over at the Tencent Keen Security Lab, researchers have successfully compromised the autopilot system of a Tesla vehicle, taking control of the vehicle. And they demonstrated their findings at the Black Hat USA 2018 Security Conference, posting a video online showing the hacks. The new report describes 3 ways they were able to take control of the vehicle's autopilot by exploiting several flaws in the Tesla's electronic control unit, or ECU. Now, my question is, there has to be some means of communication between the hacker and the ECU. Is it the cell phone system? Is it Bluetooth? Is it Wi-Fi? Well, that's 3 vectors right there. And it may well be that Tesla's engineers just weren't really thinking very clear about how people of bad intent could mess about with their cars. Of course, their goal was to get the car built and get it out the door. But it is rather amazing. We've got all these hackers out there. They even have their own conference, the Black Hat Conference. These are hackers. Many of them are cyber criminals. Nobody shows up to arrest them or interrogate them. The NSA shows up to collect resumes. There's another spyware. It used to be, well, it is on Android. It's called Exodus. It has now been ported over to the iPhone. And it looks like a helpful support application from a mobile telecom provider. But once installed, it raids all your private information. You can even listen to your conversations using the microphone. Good reason to be very careful about installing applications you don't actually know. All right, just got an email from Bovey, Minnesota. Yes, it's blizzarding here once again. We're very tired of the white stuff. It is not April 11th. It is January 100th. My husband plows for the city, and they are going in at 2 a.m. to get a head start. My goodness. Okay. Not too long ago, somebody created a browser extension called Dissenter. And this was in response to more and more corporate media websites deleting their comments section. They didn't want to have to go on through and edit out the comments that didn't agree with the editorial position. So they simply said, that's it, no more comments. So this extension was created called Dissenter. And that allows users to create their own comments section for any page on the internet. Well, Firefox didn't like that because it's been banned from the Firefox extensions gallery. The excuse given is it violates Mozilla's acceptable use policy. Well, when it first came out, it didn't. But apparently we're starting to see the browsers become just as tightly controlled as social media. Now, this one is a little bit alarming, and it even made the corporate media. Apparently, Alexa is listening to your conversations. Now, it makes sense. It has to be listening there, waiting for you to say, Alexa. But apparently, conversations are being sent to the Amazon servers, and they're being studied by Amazon technicians, human beings, ostensibly to make the system a little more responsive, a little better, a little less likely to make mistakes. But apparently they're catching some very intimate moments of their users. Apparently workers have heard a child screaming for help in 2 instances in which they believed a sexual assault was taking place. Okay, we're going to take another phone call here. Anthony in Tucson, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
I talked to you the other day, and I was trying to explain to you how they got this power to do what they were doing today. And first of all, global warming, if it is happening, would also benefit because then we don't need so much heat, oil, or fuel energy to heat our homes up.
That's true.
So from one way, it'll take from one side and helps us another way, and we just prepare for if it does happen, which I know will not. But mainly what is happening is Google was given all the money they wanted. It was printed for them. The same as all of these fantastic buildings that are built. They're built with no money. They're built with credit.
Yes.
They've given these people what they call a title of nobility because they are able to sign for money and have it printed for them. And then they use up labor to build it with life forfeiture energy, whereas no life forfeiture is rendered by the buyer of those notes or the construction of those buildings. And Google was given the same amount of money to film and photograph everybody's home that they've done up till this day. They even looked in your backyard, and they can probably even look inside your garbage can. But mainly the people that are involved with this, Webster's Dictionary 1862 describes a niggard, N-I-G-G-A-R-D, as a polluted, corrupted, vulgar, and offensive. The word niggardly, N-I-G-G-A-R-D-L-Y, is one who's covetous, overbearing, brutal, miserly, stingy, parsimonious.
Yes,
and a
absolutely, the
nigger
definition.
is one who's of the Niger River region, or as referred to as one of the low-life black origin.
No, you're blurring a line there. Okay. The two are not the same. In fact, there was a politician in Washington, D.C. some years ago got into trouble for using the word niggardly in his speech, and everybody got up and said, yeah, it's the N-word, you're racist. And they were trying to explain, no, that's not the same word. And
no, it's not.
Yeah, okay, so you got to be careful there.
It's covetous, overbearing, brutal,
yes,
miserly,
you said that already.
Stingy, parsimonious.
You said that already.
Yeah, but that's what's in the and you'll find in every dictionary they'll refer to just one of those items, but not all 7. And every member of the federal government qualifies for the word of the niggardly element, group, or association.
Well, so does every banker.
When they formed the Federal Reserve Bank system, it was a niggardly element which did this, and your Congress who went along with it because they were bought off. They broke the law. There's nothing in the Constitution that allows them to print paper money. A Federal Reserve note or a silver certificate or gold certificate was never the money. It was a bill to get the money.
Yeah, it was a claim check.
And every person who takes one, everyone who spends one breaks the law.
Well, no,
Congress has the right to coin money, not print it, and they're supposed to contain the value thereof. Every member of Congress, every judge, every senator, has a right to be charged with treason, found guilty, and exercise the law.
Anthony, I got to let you go. Got to take a break for commercials. Thank you very much. We'll be right back with the last segment of our program today. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. Earlier in the program, we were talking about the medical industrial complex and how basically the entire medical industry needs you all to be chronically sick so that they can make their money off of you. And this is a really good example here. Diabetes type 2 is epidemic in cultures that have embraced Western processed food diets. And of course, here in the West, we're constantly being told eggs are bad, you shouldn't be eating eggs at all. But apparently, over in Finland, they had 2 studies. One was an unbiased epidemiological study, and then there was a follow-up study that analyzed metabolic features among egg eaters, and both concluded those people who eat eggs have less risk of diabetes. So if diabetes type 2 is a problem, should the doctors tell you to eat more eggs? Well, maybe, but then they wouldn't be able to sell you medications to treat diabetes type 2. Because diabetes, like cancer, is big business. And it is very, very cynical. Okay, we were talking, there have been 154 cases of this fungus in Illinois since 2016. And that makes Illinois the state with the second highest occurrence of this fungus. New York had 309 reported cases, and New Jersey 104. So it's definitely out there. And the problem is it is drug resistant. And if it gets into your circulatory system, it can basically invade your whole body and be lethal. So that's going to be a nasty one. Okay, there has been a mysterious outbreak of E. coli. They don't know where it's coming from. It's spread to 5 states, infected 96 people. The states include Ohio, Kentucky, Tennessee, Virginia, and Georgia. And last year, there was an E. coli outbreak, prompted supermarkets to destroy supplies of romaine lettuce after the outbreak was traced to tainted lettuce tied to a California farm. This outbreak, they don't know. Nobody has died yet, but 11 people have been hospitalized. Now, we keep mentioning this statistic over and over again, but it bears repeating. Okay, 10% of all U.S. deaths are now due to medical errors. Medical errors are now the 3rd leading cause of death in this country after heart disease and cancer. So, now apparently, this is an article that came out of the Mirror in Great Britain. A 10-month-old baby is suffering up to 14 seizures a day after receiving the meningitis vaccine. And the parents have released video of this little tiny baby, 10-month-old, just lying on this pad, just seizing and seizing and seizing. And the parents are saying, he's a completely different baby. It's amazing. All right, there's the music. Time for me to get on out of here. Stay tuned for John Stadmiller. I'm sure he's got lots of interesting things to share with you. Please take what you learn here, share it with everybody that you know. Use email, face-to-face, paper mail. Forget social media. It's just totally, totally controlled right now. Please donate to Republic Broadcasting. They need it. Please donate to whatreallyhappened.com. We need it. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.